Welcome, everyone, to our monthly webinar series here for February, the time of year where we have forgotten our New Year's resolutions, and we want to prevent that, at least from a financial sense and a health nutrition sense, which is why we are thrilled today to have Annie Zappulla join us, a registered dietitian, nutritionist, and integrative health coach. So she is the founder of A to Z Wellness Solutions, where she helps individuals achieve their ideal health goals through evidence-based nutrition, much like we're evidence-based in our investment philosophy. She's got evidence-based in her nutritions, wellness coaching, personalized plans, all without fad diets or restrictive approaches. With years of experience in clinical and virtual dietetics, Annie is passionate about sustainable lifestyle changes, empowering clients to develop a positive relationship with food. So her approach combines that science-backed strategy with real-life practicality, making wellness both achievable and enjoyable. And she also takes insurance in her practice as well, which is quite unique. And most of the time, if you're in her network through the insurances, the sessions are at no cost to you. So please join me in welcoming Annie Zappulla as she shares her expertise on building healthier, more balanced life. Annie, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much, Justin. I appreciate you inviting me into this monthly webinar series. So thank you, Justin Rice, and those affiliated with personal wealth strategies, so that I can discuss a little bit more about my background and how we can be more intentional with nutrition this 2025. So as Justin mentioned, I am a registered dietitian nutritionist, and I'm going to be talking to you about how to be intentional with your nutrition this year. So this is generally the time of year we do see resolutions start to fall off. And so we're going to pivot that into being more intentional so that your health goals are more sustainable throughout the whole entire year. In my private practice, I don't believe in New Year's resolutions, but I do believe in New Year's intentions. So hopefully today, discussing a little bit more about intentional nutrition will allow you to discuss, be intentional about those food choices throughout the whole year. So before we get started, here we go. Here's a little bit more about me. As I mentioned, I am a registered dietitian and integrative health coach, and I'm also trained in intuitive eating. And so since graduating from my undergrad, completing my dietetic internship, and passing my RD exam, I've been a dietitian for the last 7 years. So as Justin mentioned, I've spent my time in clinical and community until I did decide to open up my own private practice in Seagirt, New Jersey, where I conduct one-on-one nutritional counseling sessions, both virtually and in person. My mission there is to help my clients sustain a long-term lifestyle change where I incorporate 3 pillars: proper nutrition education, realistic behavior change, and a positive support system. My practice is mostly insurance-based, as I'm in network with major insurance plans, including Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield, Cigna, Aetna, United Healthcare, as well as Medicare. So it's always been important to me to provide quality of care as well as accessibility to care. With my intuitive eating style, I don't resonate with restricted diets along the same lines of those resolutions. So my clients quickly understand that we're looking to sustain a long-term lifestyle change, that we align not only with your goals, but also your values, your interests, and your lifestyle. So at the end of this presentation, we're going to learn the benefits of proper nutrition and why it needs to be considered a daily act of self-care. We're also looking to figure out how to build a balanced meal, how to meal prep efficiently for a busy lifestyle, how to practice mindful eating, and how to sustain a healthy relationship with food through it all. If you are attending right now, there's going to be a couple questions that I throw out throughout the presentation, so feel free to interact with anything that I ask you. But if there's any more personal nutrition-related questions, I will answer those at the end. So of course, there are many benefits to nutrition, which we will discuss. I'm not going to run through all of these, but these are a variety of benefits that not only help our body in the interim, but also in the long term. And so something we do want to consider is being conscious of how our nutrition is affecting us day to day. And one of the key lessons I teach my clients is to look at nutrition as a form of self-care. Self-care is all about different forms of nourishment, not only for the mind, but also the body and the soul. And nutrition can provide a lot of those pockets for nourishment. Adequate and balanced nutrition is a way that we are deciding that we're going to take care of ourselves on a daily basis. And it really is the foundation for good health and well-being. We really can't achieve those health goals we want to accomplish without a balanced nutrition. So when we decide to prioritize nutrition, we are deciding to invest in ourselves. We are deciding that we value ourselves, our time, and our needs, and we must know we need and deserve to be taken care of in that way, but find a sustainable way to do so. A quote I really enjoy that I share with my clients often is that nutrition is a foundational element within the psychological needs category, which is the most basic level of hierarchy. And this comes from Maslow, who is an American psychologist who created a model that ranked human needs. It suggests that certain basic needs, like nutrition, must be met in order for us to fulfill more complex ones. Nutrition falls under the same category as breathing, water, sleep, shelter, and clothing, so it is a survival need. We need to prioritize nutrition as a form of self-care so that we can do everything else that we have on our to-do list for the rest of the day. I see a lot of clients who come into my office push to the point where their health and sacrifice is to the bottom of the priority list. And this is because of long work days, busy lifestyles, high stress levels. And our country tends to live a pretty hectic and fast-paced routine. And so that just causes us to lose focus on ourselves. So when we're talking about prioritizing this healthy nutrition, we don't talk about, we're not considering dieting, deprivation, fear, guilt, or shame around food. We're really looking to change our perspective to looking at food as nourishment, energy, enjoyment, and once again, a form of self-care. So as I mentioned, balanced nutrition definitely helps us feel our best in the moment as well as long-term. So I do find that most people get used to feeling poorly throughout the day. But when people come to see me, we're making a lot of initial minor tweaks that can show them just how much nutrition can support them. For example, most people are mildly dehydrated. Dehydration increases a hormone called ghrelin, which is our hunger hormone, and it suppresses a hormone called leptin, which is our fullness hormone. So without adequate hydration, we're going to feel hungrier during the day and we're going to eat more. The less we hydrate, the less we get signals to hydrate as well. So when we are adequately hydrating, we are also going to feel that need to hydrate. Fluid should be the first thing you consume in the morning before food, before coffee. This is because we do wake up dehydrated from just breathing overnight, as well as just that longer period of time where we're not drinking anything. So this is where I incorporate something called habit stacking with my clients. Habit stacking is essentially pairing a new habit with an already established routine. So, for example, a lot of my clients are not going to miss their morning cup of coffee. And so we may put a water bottle by the coffee machine. So while they're brewing their first cup of coffee, like I said, that they will not miss, they're going to grab that water bottle and start drinking some fluid before they get that coffee in their system. By meeting your fluid needs throughout the whole day, we are going to have more stable energy levels. Our digestion is going to be more regular. We're going to feel more concentrated and focused. And once again, that hunger is going to be lessened, so we don't overeat as much. A good goal for most people to consider for their fluid needs is about 80 ounces a day. I find that most people need at least 80 ounces when I calculate their energy needs. Shifting to nourishment in regards to food, when our body is improperly nourished, it does depict that as a stress state on our body. And so this is something that it might not feel so significant in the moment, but it can accumulate over time. So a lot of my busy clients may skip or prolong meals. And when our body becomes deprived of our main energy source, which is glucose, this results in fatigue, an inability to concentrate and focus, headaches, slower digestion. But when we accumulate that over time by regularly skipping meals, it can start to slow down our metabolism, break down muscle mass, it may cause anxiety and nutrition deficiencies, and unfortunately increase some risk for disease in the future. So as I mentioned, while we might not notice anything too extreme in the beginning, we want to consider how this can pile up in the future. Of course, some other health benefits to proper nutrition would be boosting our immune system and reducing risk of sickness and disease, which is the utmost important at this time of year, reducing cholesterol levels, blood pressure, and blood sugar. And it also just promotes a sense of overall well-being for our bodies as well. Okay, so now that we understand the benefits, we want to consider how we're going to incorporate these foods into our day. And so does anyone know, I mean, have it right here up on the screen, but there are 3 main macronutrients that we need on a daily basis. They're often referred to as macros, which a lot of people may have heard of before. And believe it or not, we do need all 3 of these components at each meal. So our body requires macronutrients, which are essentially nutrients that our body needs large amounts of on a daily basis. And then we also have micronutrients like vitamins and minerals, where our body needs less amount of those each day. So each macronutrient does play a key role in our body functioning adequately and efficiently. When we are looking to feel both full and sustained by a meal for anywhere from 3 to 5 hours at a time, the incorporation of all of these macronutrients allows us to do so. So the first one that we can discuss really quickly is carbohydrates. Carbohydrates often get a bad rep, but it is a really essential nutrient for our body. It actually is our brain, our muscles, and our nervous system's favorite and preferred energy source. So carbohydrates are a main source of fiber as well that are often found in whole grains, and that fiber found in the whole grains helps absorb the cholesterol in our blood. So when clients come to me with elevated cholesterol levels, we are looking at how to incorporate fiber content in their day. Those whole grains also include a lot of B vitamins, which is really important for brain health as well as metabolism. Carbohydrates do help regulate our blood sugar as well. So carbohydrates are going to be the food sources that break down in our body as sugar. And that doesn't have to be something that's feared. We just want to consider how we're incorporating that and how much rise those types of carbohydrates create in our body. But it does essentially raise our blood sugar, which is how we feel energized throughout the day. Carbohydrates do help us get better sleep at night by creating certain hormones like serotonin and melatonin. And it does help us boost our mood by creating certain hormones like serotonin, which helps regulate mood, sleep, and emotions. Sources of healthy carbohydrates would be your whole grains, whether that's, oats, brown rice, quinoa, whole wheat pasta, beans and legumes, certain snacky foods like popcorn, whole grain crackers, fruit and yogurt have natural sugar in there. So those are also considered a carbohydrate source. And then we also have our starchy vegetables, which would be corn, peas, and potatoes. Moving on to protein. Protein has many roles, including being the building blocks of DNA, muscles, and neurotransmitters. They, of course, help us sustain or increase our muscle mass, which helps protect our bones and avoid fractures. It helps strengthen our hair, skin, and nails. It does improve our immune system by creating antibodies, and it aids in wound healing and blood clotting. Another important component of protein is that it does help keep our blood sugar more stable when we now pair those carbohydrates with protein. So certain protein sources would be animal proteins like eggs, cheese, meats, and fish. And you can also get adequate amounts of plant-based proteins from beans, tofu, and quinoa. And the last macronutrient would be fats. So fats are important for energy. It's actually the liver and the heart's main energy source. It helps absorb our fat-soluble vitamins. So those would be vitamin A, D, E, and K. So if you're ever taking a vitamin D supplement, you want to make sure you're taking that with a meal that has some type of fat in it so we can best absorb those nutrients. Fat helps insulate our organs, so it helps protect our organs and it regulates our body temperature. It helps keep our hair shiny and our skin moisturized. And it also promotes satiety at meals, so it makes us feel satisfied after we eat, and it gives us mainly like the flavor and richness of a meal. So sources of healthy fats would be olives, olive oil, avocado oil, nuts, seeds, fatty fish, cheese, and full-fat yogurt. In addition to these macronutrients, vegetables would be an added bonus here. Vegetables are going to be the easiest way we are meeting our fiber and antioxidant needs throughout the day. And so we're ideally looking to consume at least 3 to 4 servings a day. This is also helpful in reducing risk of chronic disease, especially cancer, to consume adequate fruit and vegetable intake. The reason I regularly review the roles of the macronutrients, whether it's on a webinar or in client sessions one-on-one, is because it does help us keep a healthier perspective around food. I find that a lot of people develop a more black and white thinking around food. Something is good, something is bad, but these macronutrients wouldn't exist for no reason. And so in order to keep a healthy perspective around each of these nutrients, it is helpful to consider the role that it's adding to our day and to our body. Okay. So meal prep. Unfortunately, it is easier to be unhealthy than it is to be healthy nowadays in our society. So less balanced choices are often cheaper, more palatable, and more convenient. Then we're going to add hunger and stress in our day to the mix, and it's going to be much more difficult to make the best choice for our body. So while it may not be initially the most convenient or easiest choice, we are trying to make the healthy choice as easy and convenient as possible. Even in the intuitive eating world, where we don't look at food as good or bad or restrict any food choices, we do want to make sure to consider consider other factors outside of taste and convenience in nourishing our bodies. So we at least want to give ourselves the choice to kind of decide between the two. Has anyone ever incorporated meal prep before? Do you do that currently? Has anything worked for you in the past? If anything has, I'd love to hear any of those ideas in the chat, so we can maybe compare and discuss some options for people in order to do so. So a recent study found that those who ate 11 to 14 homemade lunches and dinners per week actually had a 13% lower risk of developing type 2 diabetes than those who ate less than 6 homemade lunches and dinners at a week. People who cook at home more do eat higher quality food, they consume less calories and spend less money on food than those who tend to dine out and eat convenient foods more often. Conversely, consuming prepared ultra-processed foods has been linked to rates of cardiometabolic disease and overall cancer risk, as well as breast cancer. So achieving your ideal health goals does not mean that we need to eliminate eating out, but we do want to be conscious of the frequency that we're doing that per week. I do find that my clients who are eating out many times per week have a harder time to achieve their health goals than eating at home more, doing some of this meal prep. So when we think of putting nutrition as a form of self-care and as a top priority, we do want to set a small portion of our free time aside for nutrition. I'm not saying all of your free time needs to be set towards nutrition, but we do want a portion of that to be set aside for ourselves. Meal prep should not take you hours to do unless you enjoy being in the kitchen all day, but the average person takes around 22 to 51 minutes to meal prep each week. So the first thing I encourage my clients to do is to take inventory each week. So I encourage them to check their pantry, check their freezer to see what they already have in the house, whether this is ingredient wise or maybe a already prepared meal that's stuffed in the freezer. Meal prep can be as simple as simply brainstorming meal ideas each week. And this is something I often start with to introduce meal prep with a lot of my clients, because at the end of the day, the last thing you want to do is think about how you're going to put a healthy meal together. So if we can at least take the decision making out of your day on what you're going to make for dinner, it makes a big difference in being consistent with your goals. It can also be preparing 1 to 2 recipes once or twice a week with easy kitchen equipment. These are generally the two approaches that work best for me and a lot of my clients, but I also think it's really helpful to meal prep 1 or 2 protein sources and have those already prepared for you. You can even consider purchasing pre-made protein sources. Cooking protein is generally going to be what takes the longest to cook. So if that is prepared for you, it's going to be much easier to put the rest of the components together. The kitchen equipment that I often recommend for my clients to incorporate for meal prep is sheet trays, crock pots, instant pots, and even air fryers. So anything where you don't have to be attached to the cooking process, you can kind of set it and forget it, is going to be much easier to incorporate into your day. So now that we've meal prepped and have the food in front of us, we want to consider how we're approaching the eating experience. Mindfulness is defined as focusing on the present moment. So mindful eating is giving food and eating our full attention. As mentioned, our society lives a very fast-paced lifestyle, so it's very easy to allow this to bleed into our mealtime. But if we want to consider nutrition as a form of self-care, we want to consider that this is likely the only opportunity that you're giving yourself some time for yourself each day. So we want to set ourselves up with that meal time, even if it's just for 10 to 15 minutes, which is only about a 3% of your time in an 8-hour day, which I think is pretty doable for most people. So the reason I'm encouraging mindful eating is because it does provide optimal satisfaction of meals. It helps us savor and enjoy meals more. It allows us to notice subtle differences in contentment after a meal. It helps reduce GI symptoms as well, like bloatedness or pain, and it reduces portion size and overeating. So a lot of my clients who incorporate mindful eating eventually stop going back for seconds at dinner, and that significantly helps them with their health goals. So here are some techniques in order to practice mindful eating. As I mentioned, that fast-paced lifestyle is going to bleed into our meal times most likely. So we want to do something that can ground us and center ourselves in the present moment just to kind of slow our physical and our mental body down. This could be taking some deep breaths. This could be saying a prayer, counting your gratitudes, or simply drinking a glass of water before you start to eat. My next recommendation is to avoid distraction. So we never want to be distracted and eating, because this is going to reduce our satisfaction around meals and likely cause us to eat more. I often tell my clients, you may feel full, but if we're not getting that satisfaction component, you're always going to be looking for the next thing. And so when we're distracted in eating, that's where that can be a mishap. I also encourage my clients to pay attention to what they're about to eat before they dive in. So look at the colors, the textures, get some of the aroma, even consider where this meal started at one point. Some other practices that we can do is putting your fork down in between each bite, taking a sip of water in between each bite, having a certain amount of chews, 10 to 20 chews per bite to really break that, digestion down. And this is something that I incorporate a lot with my gastrointestinal clients as well. So of course, if we're looking to improve gut health, we are looking at trigger foods and sensitivities with food, but we're also looking at mindful eating and the way that we are, how quickly we're eating and the pace of we're eating. So a lot of people are not breaking their food down as much, or they're taking in a lot of air when they eat, which can heighten their GI symptoms. An intuitive eating practice that we can incorporate for mindful eating is to feel your fullness. So a lot of people do eat past that point of comfortableness. And so when we can pause halfway between our meal, we can check in, okay, how's my hunger level changed? Where's my fullness level at? And how much more food do I feel like my body needs to be adequately nourished? And the last practice you can do for mindful eating would be to ask yourself what flavors, what textures, what smells you're getting and what you're liking and what you're not liking. So mindful eating is a great practice to get to know yourself more and figure out what those meals are that give you both that fullness and that satisfaction component. So while focusing on health goals, it is really important to keep a positive relationship with food and your body. When we're doing a lot of fad diets that incorporating a lot of restriction, they're generally telling us that something's wrong with our bodies and that we can't achieve our health goals because we have no control. But the reality is that hating our bodies and ourselves achieves nothing. So we want to shift that perspective into wanting to get to know our body and supporting our bodies at the same time. So some helpful tips for my clients to sustain a positive perspective around food would be to consider where you're getting your nutrition information from, especially from social media, unless you know it's coming from a reliable source. So there are a lot of fear-mongering accounts out there. And so if you're looking at some nutrition information that's making you question what you're eating or changing your mental emotional state around food, consider muting them or unfollowing them if they're not serving your health journey right now. We also want to set realistic expectations. So in regards to resolutions, we really want to question whether this is sustainable to achieve in a few weeks, in a few months, and for many years. So there is no one way of eating that's perfect every single day. And so know that your body's interests and energy needs are going to change on a regular basis, and there's nothing wrong with that. Along with fad diets, you want to avoid restricting your body of energy and focus on listening to it more. So even for weight loss goals, you should not be hungry all day. So if you are starving, that could be an indication that your body is just not getting enough each day, and we want to evaluate that. Another important component that I mentioned earlier is to change our verbiage from black and white thinking and good and bad thinking. So when we talk about food and say something is bad and we're demonizing it, it's essentially going to boil down to us saying we're bad. And that thought process tends to spiral for a lot of my clients. And that can reduce our motivation and self-esteem to keep up with our goals. So whether you just decide to focus on thinking of food as fuel and some of the benefits we talked about earlier, here's some other verbiage that can be helpful for my clients. So instead of good or bad, we might say it's maybe more balanced. It might be a lighter meal, something that's more refreshing. It's crunchy, it's rich, it's flavorful, it's satisfying, it's decadent, or it's simply just a fun food. And so a lot of these different descriptions have a much more positive tone that'll keep us staying more motivated with our health goals. We want to allow ourselves to enjoy eating, because those health goals aren't going to be sustained if there's no fun and enjoyment there. So you should still be able to enjoy food even when prioritizing your health goals. And lastly, we want to let go of food guilt. So I often tell my clients, guilt is not on the ingredient list, so we're not going to start adding that in. And guilt often comes up with my clients when we're attaching a morality attached to food. So like I said, there's no good or bad food. There's nothing that's approved and not approved. So we really want to check the reality of that. If we're committing a crime, breaking the law, lying, yes, those are all reasons to maybe feel guilty. But if we're just eating food and nourishing our body, that guilt is not helping anything. So we want to leave that behind as much as we can. So to tie this all together, we want to be realistic with any health goals we have in mind. When we set out on new goals, we have a new heightened sense of optimism and motivation, and then life can happen, right? February starts to happen, things get busy, and we might start to lose track of our goals. So there's going to be challenging days and weeks, so it's important to sustain a positive mindset through it all. Like I mentioned, we can't hate ourselves into anything, we can't should ourselves into anything, and we can't shame ourselves into anything. So this is where that positive self-talk comes into play. A statistic that I reference for a lot of my clients is that we have about an average of 60,000 thoughts per day. Of those, approximately 80% are negative and 90% are repetitive. So I really enjoy the quote of choosing to nourish our minds by replacing negative thoughts with empowering ones. This is where it gets even trickier. Only 5% of our cognitive activity is conscious and 95% is subconscious. But our subconscious does mimic our conscious thinking. So anything that we're consciously thinking just 5% of the day, our subconscious is going to perceive it to be true and mimic that 95% of the time. So if we're consciously saying, oh, this food is so bad for me, I ruined my whole diet, I'm failing right now, even if that's just one moment in time, that's likely circulating in your head a lot more than we think. So to change our negative consciousness, we must begin replacing those negative thoughts with more positive ones in order to rewire our brain. So utilizing mantras and affirmations throughout a health journey is a really powerful tool for my clients to boost motivation, their self-esteem, reduce self-doubt and stress, and stay focused on their goals that give them a sense of purpose. So this is a positive mantra I will leave you with, and hopefully one you can take with you in your health journey. I encourage you to say, I choose to focus on being intentional with my thoughts and my actions. I embody the best version of myself today and moving forward. So that's all I have for you. If you do have any questions, we can look at the chat. Feel free to add some in now. I'd be happy to answer anything that has come up throughout the presentation.
So, Annie, thank you so much. And we do have a question in already. So if you have more
Okay.
questions, definitely feel free to load them up because we'll be taking them. But I just wanted to say, first thing, one of the reasons, I love Annie, besides the fact that she's, caring, knowledgeable, personable, it is the fact that the complete lack of judgment she has around your food and food choices. So we're in a group together that meets monthly, and food. We order food there and things, and I'm sitting next to her at points, and I order this huge, massive cheeseburger with French fries, and there's no judgment whatsoever about different food choices that people make, and so that's just one of the things that I love about her. And when most people know things about food. So knowing you need to hydrate and drink water. I don't think that was the first time I mean, if it was the first time you heard it today, congratulations. But I don't think that was the first time that you heard that today. But the key thing is how do you implement it and how do you do it? Because knowing it is one thing, actually implementing and doing it is another. So Annie, I love the idea of the habit stacking and combining things in something that you've already formed a habit around to make sure that you're doing and including things that are healthy, like putting that water next to the coffee maker so you can drink that while you're making your coffee. So I just love the implementation, not just that, yeah, you need to drink more water and hydrate yourselves.
Thank you.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I'll take the first question here. So it's around snacking. So you've had your last meal of the day. How do you stop snacking in those hours afterwards, like kind of late night snacking?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we'll incorporate a lot of mindful eating in these aspects too. So I often encourage my clients to kind of step back and think about their meal that they just had, right? If we are having all of those components there and we know that meal, when they're put together right, should last us 3 to 5 hours. If we're wanting a snack afterwards, we want to check in. Well, if I had everything, all the components in that meal, does my body really feel like it needs nourishment in the form of energy, right? Am I feeling hunger cues? If I am, maybe we need to incorporate some more balance there. A lot of times I find my clients say, no, I'm not hungry, but I want to eat, right? So that's where we want to kind of slow down that decision making. Like I said, we have 60,000 thoughts a day. Just because we have one thought doesn't make it true. Same thing goes with food choices. So we can often get these impulse thoughts around food. And so we want to consider if that's a realistic thought. So I often encourage my clients to ride those waves. So ride that craving wave, ride that thought wave, might create a buffer of 10 minutes or so and wait to check in and say, okay, do I really need this? Or was that a more impulse thought there? If you're recognizing you're not hungry, but you're still eating anyways, we want to consider what type of nourishment that is, right? If your body's not needing energy, it might be going to that food for comfort, stress relief, distraction, and we're looking to maybe find some alternatives for those as well. So hopefully that answers your question. If you're having if you're struggling with eating regularly at the end of the day. I will say too, if you are feeling hungry, like I said, we want to look at that balance at that last meal, but also throughout the course of your day. Are you skipping any meals? Have you adequately nourished yourself throughout the day? Or are you sitting down after a busy day, skipping a meal and snacks, and then it's all setting in that you're hungry and maybe you haven't had enough there.
Awesome. Great, great context there. Another question coming in around like supplementation. And even in our office, there's some people that drink like the green drinks, AG1 and others. Like,
Mhm.
where do those fit into your overall philosophy? Do they fit in, and how do you see them?
Yeah, good question. There's a lot of supplements out there, so we want to just be conscious of where they're coming from. Supplements are not regulated by the FDA, so the first thing I encourage my clients to do is make sure that it has third-party testing, meaning another party is coming in to make sure that what it's saying is in there is true. I look at supplements as kind of like a booster. Of course, we want to get food in first, but and we work on that nutritionally, but supplements can kind of boost what you're already doing, but it's not going to be the end all be all. It's not going to be the thing that resolves everything. So we want to consider the purpose of it, that it's a quality source, and what else we're doing along with that. But I would say those are things that we generally talk about in sessions, and supplements are very personalized per person. You have to consider your history, your medication, what your nutrition looks like, and a variety of other factors to make sure it is a good fit for you.
Awesome.
Mhm.
Another question coming in. When I eat by myself, I like to read. Is that
Okay.
allowing me to slow down, or is that what you mean by being distracted?
So reading can definitely distract us depending on how focused you are with that. If we're eating and reading at the same time, we're definitely not giving our nutrition our full attention in that capacity. So I would recommend kind of separating those experiences out so you can be fully immersed in the book and then fully immersed in your meal as well.
Awesome.
Mhm.
And how do you feel about fasting? Where does that fit in, if at all? And is that something that you recommend and talk about to your clientele?
Yes. So fasting is definitely more of like a trending topic nowadays, and it has many different variations, whether that's intermittent fasting or fasting for religious purposes. I often talk with my clients where they see the benefit and the purpose of that being incorporated into their nutrition routine. A lot of us actually end up fasting for a good period of time from when we stop eating after dinner to when we break that fast with breakfast. So we want to consider whether those additional hours are really necessary or not. And at least in regards to intermittent fasting, I don't generally recommend that for my female clients. With our hormones, it's usually depicted as more of a stress state. But one of the benefits that we see through research, mostly through that, is how late we're eating. So it's actually, we see through research that it's better to, if you're eating in a different window of time, that the benefit comes from not eating so late at night. So a lot of people will fast maybe like, and not break their fast till 12 o'clock, and that causes them to eat later. But more of that benefit is just to consider like how late we're eating. So I would consider that factor. But a lot of people are fasting for at least 12 hours if you consider like the last time you eat at night until you break that fast the next day.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, it's already built into how we work in our sleep.
Yeah. Hmm.
And then if we, you know, can push up that last meal of the day, a little bit, giving ourselves, number one, time to digest it, and then two, more sleep to break between meals. I mean, you can extend that fasting window
Right.
farther without really needing to change much.
Right.
So that I think that's a
Exactly.
good solution there.
Yeah. And depending on how late you eat, you want to consider if that's affecting your sleep too, because sleep is one of those survival needs. Sleep can significantly affect just how we feel mentally and physically the next day, as well as our food choices. So, eating in the evening isn't a bad thing, but we want to make sure that it's not interrupting our other survival mechanisms.
Yeah, awesome. David, anything else from your end?
So you just touched on something that I had heard another nutrition speak about, the idea being that if you want to lose weight, sleep more.
Hmm.
Well,
Yes. Yes. So that people, we do find that those who don't get adequate sleep can eat anywhere from 250 to 500 extra calories in the day. Sleep, along with hydration, is one of those things that also interrupts our hunger hormone. So it can make us feel hungrier during the day and less satisfied during the day. So if we think about replenishing our hormones, it replenishes our motivation and concentration as well. And so it's really hard to also practice that mindful eating when we're not getting adequate sleep too.
okay, so Justin, if I'm not in this afternoon, it means I'm going to have a glass of water and take a nap.
Yeah, yeah, that's my
That's
prescription
what
right
I'm
now.
hearing.
Yeah, yeah, love that.
So David, do you want to just wrap us out here?
Yeah. So Annie, thank you so much for this. I've been taking notes. If you saw my head down, I've been
Oh,
writing a lot of this down because I thought it was very insightful and very practical, things that you can
yeah,
put into practice. So I appreciate that.
thank you.
Um, for all those in attendance, I want to make sure that you're aware that our next monthly webinar is going to be, as always, the first Wednesday of the month, which next month will be March 5th, Wednesday at noon. And of course, for those who cannot attend that certain session, of course, everyone who's listening is actually in attendance right now. But for anybody who can't attend any of our sessions, they do get posted on our YouTube channel. And right now, there's actually a pretty good library of different topics that you can go, both financial and non-financial. And I hope everyone makes use of that as well.
All right. Well, thank you so much, David. Thank you, Annie. And I'm going to go get some water right now to make sure I can stay hydrated and be ready for my meetings throughout the rest of the day. Annie, thank you. Any final from you?
Thank you so much for allowing me to be a part of your webinar series. I hope you pulled some nuggets of information today that can help you today and for many weeks ahead. So I appreciate the invitation, and I hope everyone stays well.
Awesome. Well, thank you.
Thank you so much.